I was engaged to Bailey for 8 months, following a beautiful 5-year relationship where I thought we knew everything about each other. When she planned a 2-week European tour with her college friends Amanda, Jessica, and Lauren, I supported her completely. I never expected that the night before her departure, she would suddenly suggest we take a break while she was away. Her reasoning that it would strengthen our relationship seemed strange, but I tried to understand. If you've ever had your trust broken by someone you loved, let me know where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button while I tell you how I discovered what was really happening on Bailey's European Girls trip. Bailey and I met at my cousin's wedding 5 years ago. I was a groomsman, and she was a friend of the bride. From across the reception hall, I spotted her laughing with friends, her dark hair catching the light. When our eyes met, something just clicked. I worked up the courage to ask her to dance, and we spent the entire night talking like we had known each other for years. Our first date was a week later at a small Italian restaurant downtown. The conversation flowed effortlessly as we discovered our shared love of travel, classic films, and hiking. Bailey had this way of listening intently when I spoke, making me feel like the only person in the room. By our third date, I knew there was something special between us. After 6 months, we were practically inseparable. We complemented each other perfectly. Her spontaneity balanced my planning nature. At the 2-year mark, we decided to move in together. I still remember carrying her boxes up to our apartment, both of us exhausted but giddy with excitement about starting this new chapter. The proposal came 3 years later during a sunset hike to our favorite mountain overlook. I had planned it for months, hiding the ring in my hiking pack and nearly having a heart attack when she almost discovered it while looking for trail mix. When I finally got down on one knee and asked her to marry me, her eyes filled with tears as she said yes. The 8 months of our engagement were filled with wedding planning, house hunting, and dreams of our future together. Throughout our relationship, Bailey maintained close friendships with her 3 college roommates. Amanda was the wild one of the group, always single, constantly posting party pictures on social media and often pulling the others into her adventures. Jessica had recently finalized a messy divorce and was vocal about wanting to live it up now that she was free. Lauren was quieter, more reserved, one-on-one. But when the 4 of them got together, she transformed, matching their energy and enthusiasm. The European trip planning began about 4 months before their departure. Bailey was thrilled when the others suggested a 2-week tour through London, Paris, Barcelona, and Rome. I encouraged her to go, knowing how important these friendships were to her. I even helped research affordable accommodations and must-see attractions in each city, creating a shared document where they could all add ideas. You should definitely visit the Sagrada Familia in Barcelona, I suggested one evening as Bailey scrolled through travel sites on her laptop. The architecture is incredible. That's a great idea, she replied, but I noticed she seemed distracted, quickly minimizing a chat window when I sat beside her. That was the first subtle sign that something was changing. In the weeks that followed, I noticed Bailey becoming increasingly protective of her phone. She added a new password and would turn the screen away when messages came through. Our usually open policy about devices suddenly had exceptions. The girls held frequent planning sessions at our apartment, but unlike previous gatherings where I was welcome to join for part of the evening, these felt deliberately exclusionary. When I would bring drinks or snacks into the living room, conversations would abruptly shift to innocent topics. "We were just discussing the weather in Paris this time of year," Amanda would say with an overly bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. Bailey's shopping habits changed too. She bought new clothes for the trip that were unlike her usual style, more revealing tops, shorter dresses outfits. I had trouble picturing her wearing to the museums and cultural sites she claimed to be excited about. When I commented on a particularly low-cut blouse, she dismissed my observation. "Europe is more fashion-forward," she explained. "I just want to fit in." Despite these concerning changes, I convinced myself it was just pre-trip excitement. To show my support, I threw her a surprise bon voyage party the weekend before departure, inviting close friends and decorating our apartment with travel-themed decorations. I also gave her a personalized leather journal with her initials embossed on the cover. "For all your European adventures," I said, as she unwrapped it. "This is beautiful," she whispered, and for a moment I saw genuine emotion in her eyes before she quickly looked away. The night before her early morning flight, I prepared her favorite dinner, homemade pasta with the sauce recipe her grandmother had taught me. As we ate, I sensed an unusual tension. Bailey seemed distracted, pushing food around her plate more than eating it. "Everything okay?" I asked, nervous about the trip. She set down her fork and took a deep breath. "Actually, there's something I wanted to discuss." "Of course, what's up?" "I've been thinking about our relationship lately," she began, not meeting my eyes. "This trip is a big deal for me, 2 weeks away exploring new places." "I know, and I'm really excited for you," I assured her. "Well, I think it might be good for us to take a break while I'm gone." The words hit me like a physical blow. "A break? What do you mean exactly? Just some space to think and experience things freely," she explained, her voice oddly rehearsed. "I think it could make our relationship stronger in the long run. After 5 years together and 8 months engaged, you want a break right before your vacation." I struggled to keep my voice steady. "It's not like that," she insisted. "It's just temporary. 2 weeks to clear our heads." Despite my confusion and hurt, I didn't want to spoil her trip with an argument. I reluctantly agreed, hoping this was just pre-wedding jitters or temporary uncertainty that would resolve itself. "If that's what you need," I finally said, "then okay." That night we slept with an invisible wall between us, the furthest we had been while sharing the same bed in years. The next morning at the airport, our goodbye felt hollow. Bailey seemed distracted, constantly checking her phone and glancing towards security where her friends waited. The woman I was planning to marry now felt like a stranger, our embrace awkward and forced. "Have an amazing trip," I said, forcing enthusiasm into my voice. "Thanks," she replied, giving me a quick, dry kiss that felt nothing like our usual goodbyes. "No, I love you," followed just a hasty wave as she rolled her suitcase toward her waiting friends. I stood watching until they disappeared through security, a knot forming in my stomach. The first few days of our break were disorienting. I respected her request for space, sending only a brief text to confirm she had arrived safely in London. Her reply came hours later, a simple, "All good," that felt like correspondence between acquaintances rather than partners planning a life together. To distract myself, I threw myself into work projects I had been putting off. My boss noticed the sudden productivity. "Everything okay?" she asked after I volunteered for a third overtime shift that week. "You're not usually this eager to stay late." I gave a non-committal answer, unwilling to admit that returning to our empty apartment each night felt unbearable. My friend Jake called on the 4th day of Bailey's trip, suggesting we grab dinner. At the restaurant, he studied my face with concern. "You look like hell, man. What's going on?" After explaining the situation, Jake didn't hide his skepticism. "A break during a vacation. That sounds convenient." "She said it would make us stronger," I defended weakly, though doubt had been growing in my mind. Jake set down his beer. "Look, I didn't want to say anything before, but Sarah saw Bailey and her friends at that new club downtown last month. There was some guy hanging around their table all night. Probably just a random guy hitting on them," I suggested, though unease was spreading through me. Maybe Jake conceded, but something feels off here. That night, I made the mistake of checking social media. Amanda had posted photos from their first days in London, and Bailey, and the others at tourist spots, but also at nightclubs I hadn't heard mentioned in the itinerary. In one image, Bailey was dancing with her arm around a tall, dark-haired man I didn't recognize. The photo disappeared within an hour, but not before I had seen it. More concerning was how these images contradicted what Bailey had told me during our brief text exchanges. She had mentioned quiet days at museums and early nights because of all the walking. Yet Amanda's now deleted posts showed a very different trip. VIP sections at exclusive clubs, champagne bottles, and groups of well-dressed men joining their adventures. Bailey's communications became increasingly sporadic and strange. Her texts would come at odd hours, often around 3 or 4 a.m. European time. When I managed to get her on a video call, she always had an excuse for why it couldn't last long. "The hostel Wi-Fi is terrible," she would claim, though the background never looked like a budget accommodation. "We're heading out to dinner," she would say, at what would be 11 p.m. her time. During our brief conversations, she appeared distracted, sometimes slightly intoxicated, and frequently someone would call her name from off camera, causing her to quickly end the call. The truth began unraveling when they reached Barcelona. Jake's cousin Trevor happened to be there on business and recognized Bailey from photos he had seen at Jake's apartment. He sent Jake a picture that stopped my heart. Bailey on a beach club deck, locked in a passionate kiss, with a man who definitely wasn't me. It wasn't just a casual encounter. They looked comfortable together, his hand resting possessively on her lower back in a way that suggested familiarity. "Who is he?" I texted Trevor. The girls called him Daniel. Seemed like they all knew him well. Bailey introduced him as Amanda's friend, but they didn't act like he was with Amanda, if you know what I mean. My mind raced back through conversations from the past few months, landing on Bailey mentioning an Amanda's business contact in Europe who was giving them tips for their trip. She had referred to him as Daniel, dismissing him as some finance guy Amanda met through work. With mounting dread, I logged into our shared cloud storage account that evening. We had set it up years ago to share photos and documents, both using it less frequently lately. There, in a folder I had never seen before, were recent photos Bailey had taken but not posted publicly. My hands shook as I scrolled through images of her and Daniel, at intimate dinners, walking hand in hand through European streets, and even kissing in front of the Eiffel Tower. The most devastating discovery came from an automatic backup of text messages I didn't know was active on our shared account. Scrolling back through months of exchanges between Bailey and Daniel revealed the awful truth. Their relationship had begun over 6 months ago, when they met at a conference Amanda had brought Bailey to as her +1. The European trip had been partially planned around Daniel's business schedule in various cities. "Can't wait to have 2 whole weeks together," Daniel had written. "No more sneaking around." I told him we're taking a break during the trip, Bailey had responded. He didn't even question it. The contempt in those messages crushed me. I sat in the dark of our apartment reading through months of deception, each message driving home how thoroughly I'd been betrayed. That night, I could barely function, alternating between rage, heartbreak, and numb disbelief. I called in sick to work the next day, unable to focus on anything beyond the imploding ruins of what I thought was a solid relationship. When I finally worked up the courage to call Bailey and confront her, her denial was immediate and vehement despite the evidence. "You're going through my private messages, my photos. That's a complete invasion of privacy," she deflected, voice rising with manufactured outrage. "The photos with Daniel in Paris, Barcelona. Those look pretty intimate for Amanda's business contact," I replied, struggling to keep my voice steady. "They're completely innocent. You're totally overreacting," she insisted. "Daniel is just showing us around. Those pictures are being taken out of context. And the messages about your relationship, about planning this trip around his schedule, about telling me you needed a break. You're spying on me. Going through my personal conversations, that's the real issue here," she shouted before abruptly ending the call. Minutes later, a text arrived. "I can't believe you don't trust me. This is exactly why I needed space." The audacity of her attempting to twist the situation to make me the villain for discovering her betrayal rather than acknowledging her months of lies finally crystallized what I needed to do. The days following my discovery were a blur of pain and clarity. I needed guidance before making any final decisions, so I called my parents, who had weathered their own challenges over 30 years of marriage. "Mom, how did you know Dad was the right person?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Because even during our worst arguments, I never doubted his loyalty or basic respect for me," she answered without hesitation. Her words hit home. Bailey's betrayal wasn't just about the physical infidelity. It was the calculated deception, the disregard for our history, and the willingness to manipulate my trust. I also spoke with my therapist in an emergency session, who helped frame what had happened. "This isn't a reflection on your worth," she emphasized. "This is about her choices, not your value." Jake came over that weekend, listening as I processed my thoughts. Unlike what you see in movies, he didn't push me to angry revenge or dramatic confrontations. "Whatever you decide," he said, "make sure it preserves your self-respect. That's what matters now." Taking their advice, I spent several days reflecting on our relationship, recognizing patterns I'd overlooked. Bailey's occasional girls' weekends that returned her distant and emotionally unavailable. The unexplained gaps in communication. The gradual insertion of Daniel's name into conversations months ago, establishing his existence in a way that wouldn't raise suspicion. I realized with painful clarity that the break suggestion was never about strengthening our relationship. It was simply cover for her to enjoy her time with Daniel without the inconvenience of maintaining an elaborate lie from thousands of miles away. My decision crystallized not in a moment of anger, but in quiet resolve. I would end our engagement, but I would do it thoughtfully with dignity rather than destruction. This wasn't about punishing Bailey or winning some emotional battle. It was about respecting myself enough to walk away from someone who clearly didn't value what we had built. With my mind made up, I began executing my plan methodically. First, I carefully packed Bailey's belongings, treating her things with more respect than she had shown our relationship. I labeled boxes clearly, including items she might need immediately versus things that could be stored. I called her parents, with whom I had always had a good relationship. This conversation terrified me, but I felt they deserved to hear directly from me. "We've noticed Bailey seems different lately," her father admitted after I explained the situation without graphic details. "I'm sorry this is happening, son." Their understanding was unexpected but comforting. They knew their daughter, and reading between the lines, I sensed this wasn't the first time they'd seen this pattern. Next came the practical matters. I visited the jeweler where we had purchased the engagement ring, explaining the situation. Their return policy offered a 60% refund for my particular circumstances, which I accepted gratefully. The honeymoon reservations in Hawaii were next. We had booked an oceanfront suite for 2 weeks in Maui, putting down a substantial deposit. The cancellation fee was painful, but necessary. With the partial refunds from these cancellations, I booked a solo trip to a mountain retreat in Colorado, a place to heal once everything was finalized. I expected a confrontation when Bailey discovered what I'd done, but I didn't anticipate how it would unfold. The call came at 2 a.m. my time, as she was frantically checking her email in Rome after receiving a cancellation notification from our wedding venue. "What the hell is going on?" she demanded, her voice shrill with panic. "Why did I get an email saying our venue deposit was refunded?" "Because I canceled our wedding," I replied calmly. "Just like you canceled our relationship when you decided to use this trip to be with Daniel. That's not. It was just a fling." "A stupid mistake," she stammered, shifting strategies instantly. "It doesn't mean anything." "If it doesn't mean anything, that's actually worse," I pointed out. "You were willing to throw away 5 years and our future for something meaningless. You're overreacting. We can work through this. I love you, not him." The desperation in her voice might once have weakened my resolve, but now it only confirmed I was making the right decision. "Your things will be at your sister's place when you return," I said. "I've already contacted the wedding vendors and canceled our honeymoon. You can't just decide this on your own. We need to talk about this in person. Bailey, I deserve someone who doesn't need a break to realize they love me. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for." I ended the call as she began to cry her tears, feeling like a performance rather than genuine remorse. 3 days later, Bailey cut her trip short, showing up at our apartment unannounced. I had anticipated this possibility and asked Jake to be there with me. She looked disheveled, her eyes red from crying or lack of sleep. "Please," she begged from the doorway. "Just let me explain." "There's nothing to explain," I said, maintaining a calm I didn't entirely feel. "Your messages with Daniel explained everything. It was a mistake. A terrible mistake. I'll never see him again, I promise. We can go to counseling, rebuild trust. Please don't throw away everything we have." Had I corrected gently, everything we had, her tactics shifted between tears, anger, accusations, and finally desperate promises. Through it all, I remained firm but not cruel. This wasn't about hurting her back. It was about protecting myself from further pain. Our final meeting happened a week later when I returned a box of personal keepsakes that had special meaning. Photos of her grandparents, an award from college, small mementos I knew she would want. She had calmed somewhat, reality setting in. "I really messed up, didn't I?" she asked quietly as she took the box. "Yes," I answered simply. "You did." There was nothing more to say. As she walked to her car, I felt the first real sense of closure. The engagement was over, and somehow I was going to be okay. The first weeks alone in our apartment, now just my apartment, were undeniably difficult. Everywhere I looked held memories, phantom echoes of laughter and conversations. The empty side of the closet. The abandoned coffee mug she always used still sitting in the cupboard, the wall where we had planned to hang wedding photos. The pain came in waves, sometimes receding enough to let me function, other times crashing over me when I least expected it. I found myself standing in the grocery store, staring at Bailey's favorite cereal, unable to move for several minutes, until a concerned employee asked if I needed help. Rather than trying to suppress these feelings, I followed my therapist's advice to process them healthily. I established a routine of therapy sessions, daily exercise, and journaling. The physical exertion of running helped burn off the restless anger, while writing allowed me to externalize thoughts that would otherwise circle endlessly in my mind. My support system proved invaluable during this time. Jake and other friends made sure I wasn't alone for too long, organizing hiking trips and casual dinners without making them feel like pity parties. My parents called daily sometimes just to check in, other times to share stories of their own relationship struggles and how they had overcome them. The hardest times reveal who you really are, my father told me. And son, I'm proud of how you're handling this. The solo trip to Colorado became my turning point. I had booked a small cabin near Rocky Mountain National Park, planning to spend 10 days hiking and reflecting. The mountains held no memories of Bailey, no associations to trigger fresh pain. On my second day there, I met another solo traveler on the trail, a man in his 50s who had gone through a difficult divorce years earlier. One day you realize you've gone hours without thinking about them, he shared as we rested beside an alpine lake. That's when you know healing has begun. In the following days, I met others with similar stories, relationships that had ended painfully but had ultimately led to personal growth. Their perspectives helped me see my situation as part of a universal human experience rather than a unique tragedy. The pivotal moment came on the 7th morning of my trip. I had hiked before dawn to watch the sunrise from a mountain overlook. As the first light broke over the distant peaks, painting the sky in brilliant orange and gold, a profound sense of peace settled over me. For the first time since discovering Bailey's betrayal, I felt truly free, not just from her but from the weight of what might have been. In that moment, I realized I was grateful. Not for the betrayal itself, but for learning the truth, before we had legally bound our lives together, before we had children, before untangling would have been exponentially more complex and painful. 6 months after the canceled engagement, my life had found a new rhythm. I had moved to a different apartment in a neighborhood I had always liked, but Bailey had found too noisy. The fresh start in a space without memories proved therapeutic. My career, which had taken a backseat during the wedding planning, now flourished with renewed focus. I had accepted a project management position I might have declined while planning a honeymoon and house hunting. The new role challenged me professionally and introduced me to colleagues who knew nothing of my personal history, allowing me to define myself beyond the guy whose fiancée cheated. I reconnected with old friends who had gradually fallen away during my relationship with Bailey. Some of these renewed friendships revealed how isolating my relationship had become without my noticing. Bailey had subtly discouraged certain friendships, particularly with people she couldn't charm or impress. Dating again happened organically and cautiously. I was transparent about my recent experience without dwelling on it and established healthier boundaries from the start. The women I met seemed to appreciate this honesty, and while none of these connections had yet developed into something serious, each interaction helped rebuild my confidence in my own judgment. The unexpected encounter with Bailey came 8 months after our breakup at a mutual friend's housewarming party. I had considered not attending when I heard she might be there, but decided avoiding social events forever was impractical in our overlapping social circles. She arrived alone, looking momentarily lost when she spotted me across the room. Eventually, we ended up in the same conversation circle, the awkwardness palpable until our host skillfully redirected the discussion to neutral topics. Later, as I was preparing to leave, Bailey approached me in the hallway. "You look good," she offered hesitantly. "Happy. I am," I replied, surprised to find it was completely true. "Daniel and I," she began, then stopped. "It didn't work out." I nodded, feeling no satisfaction in her disappointment, but no sympathy either. "I hope you find what you're looking for, Bailey." "I think I had it," she whispered, but I pretended not to hear as I said my goodbyes and stepped outside. Driving home, I realized the encounter had left me feeling nothing beyond a mild, detached sadness for what had been lost. The anger, betrayal, and heartbreak had faded, leaving only lessons I would carry forward. The experience taught me that trust is both precious and fragile, requiring constant nurturing through open communication and consistent actions. I learned that genuine love uplifts rather than constrains and never requires breaks to appreciate its value. Perhaps most importantly, I discovered the essential difference between fighting to save a relationship and knowing when to walk away with dignity. Self-respect must be the foundation upon which all other relationships are built. Looking back now, I can see that the broken engagement, painful as it was, became the catalyst for rebuilding my life on a more authentic foundation. The relationship I now value most is the one with myself, honest, forgiving, and strong enough to weather future storms. Sometimes the best thing someone can do for you is to show you who they really are, even if it breaks your heart. In my case, Bailey's betrayal freed me from a future that would have been built on deception. For that unexpected gift of truth, I can now feel a strange kind of gratitude. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that ultimately led to something better in your life? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. Remember, sometimes the end of what we thought we wanted creates space for what we truly need. Thank you for listening, and I wish you strength and wisdom in all your relationships.